In the last episode, we created a rectangle spinning around the mouse, and the rectangle is spinning around its own center. In today's episode, let's draw 4 rectangles on the same screen spinning, each rectangle spinning around its own center. So first, let's see where we can put these rectangles on the screen. Let's work with a screen that is 400 pixels wide and 400 pixels tall. So if we split this in 4 parts vertically and 4 parts horizontally, we could draw our rectangles around these 4 points here. So which numbers do we need to place our rectangles on these positions? We know our screen is 400 pixels wide. The middle is in 200 here. This is 0, so we know here's 100 and 300. Same thing vertically. This would be 0, 100, 200, 300, and 400. So this point right here is, let me draw the x-axis and the y-axis. So in the x-axis is 100, and in the y-axis here is 100. So this will be the position of our first rectangle. The second one is 300 and 100. Our third rectangle is again at 100x and 300y. You can see this 100, 200, 300. And the last rectangle here is at 300, 300. So now we know where we're gonna draw our 4 rectangles. So we begin here with this very simple program where we set the size. At 400, 400, the background will be white, no border for the shapes we draw, and a black background, and then an empty draw function. So we could easily test those numbers here. Let's see if they work out. That's 100, 100, 80 pixels wide and 80 pixels tall. And I'm gonna paste this 4 times. And this is, you can check again, 300, 100, then 100, 300, and 300 2 times. And we can run the program to see if, and we see it's not exactly as we expected. So it's drawing the top left corner of the rectangle here, but I want the center. So we saw that you can do this using rect mode center. So now these numbers here mean the center of the rectangles. And this is much better. So now we just need to make them spin around. And we have learned that we can only make things spin around the origin. This is the default axis, X and Y. And if we have here these 4 rectangles, by default, this rectangle will rotate around the origin. So the rectangle will go around here. But that's not what we want. We want a rectangle to rotate around its center. So we have to move the axis using translate, and we have to make that the new axis, this is new X and new Y, we have to match the center here. So instead of drawing this rectangle at 100, 100, I'm going to translate 100, 100. That makes that this is moving the axis to this new position. Now I can freely rotate. I could rotate my rectangles. I'm gonna use a variable again, r. So I will declare this variable at the beginning. Float r is 0. And I will increase it. R equals r plus 0,02. So let's see what's happening now. Okay, first thing we need to copy this background So we are erasing the screen after each drawing. And that's not working out very well now. We have moved our axis to 100, 100, which is right. But then we are drawing our first rectangle 100 pixels to the right from there, which is here, and 100 pixels down. So we're drawing our rectangle here, the first one. The second one would be here, third, and fourth. So what we need to do now is change these numbers. This rectangle should be actually drawn at 0, 0, which is here, centered with the origin. What about the others? We have to draw the second rectangle 200 pixels to the right. We can see it here. This is our first rectangle. This is 100 pixels to the right, 200 pixels to the right. So that means draw this one at 200 and 0. Compared to the first rectangle, the third one is 200 pixels down. So it's 0 pixels to the right and 200 pixels down. And the last one is 200 pixels in both directions. It's 200 pixels to the right and 200 pixels down. So we get this rectangle. So let's run this and see what's going on. So we have now the first rectangle is correct. It's spinning around its center. But all the other three rectangles are also spinning around the center of the first one. And this is kind of tricky. How can we need to have different translate for each rectangle. Because remember what we did down here, we get a new X and new Y. We are moving our axis. So for the second rectangle, we should move our axis. We should move it here. And then we can rotate around this point. But it gets a bit tricky, and I'm gonna show you why, and we need a new instruction to solve this problem. The new axis, this new X and new Y, are not only moved down and to the right, this happens when we execute translate, but we also rotate. So that means that suddenly maybe our axis look like this. This is our very new X and very new Y. The white one is just translated. The pink one is also rotated. So it's fine when we are just drawing one rectangle here, which is spinning. What happens now when we draw a second rectangle, 200 pixels to the right and 0 pixels down? So it's counting down here. This is 100, this is 200. So it's drawing here a second rectangle, 200 pixels to the right. And you can see this is what's going on in our animation. Our rectangles are here and they all rotate around this point here. So what we need now is a way to reset, to remove all these transformations on our axis. We need to start from scratch. To rotate our second rectangle here, we need to begin having our origin here, like it's on the beginning, and our y-axis here and our x-axis here. Then it's easy to calculate that we want to move like 1 to 300 pixels to the right, like we wrote here, and 100 pixels down from the x-axis. So we get this point. So we need a reset. This function that gives us this reset is called reset matrix. Reset matrix. When we execute reset matrix, it forgets about all this translation and rotation, and everything becomes back to normal. So we can use translate and rotate for our new object. So let's do this here. It's called reset matrix. And now we can do the same that we did here. Translate and rotate for our second rectangle. What what are the values for translate? So we saw here the first one was 100, 100. So the second one is 300, 100. We're gonna put now the axis here, well, a little bit higher, like here. So 300, 100. We're gonna use the same rotation. And again, now we have to draw the rectangle centered around our axis. We're gonna draw all our rectangles always centered at 0, 0. Let's run the program now. So you can see now it's working. We have the other two rectangles are drawn on top because I'm drawing 3 identical rectangles. So I'm gonna just copy this again. I'm gonna do again reset matrix. So this is canceling the translate and rotate. And then I can do a new translate and rotate after that. This time it's gonna be 100, 300. And then the same rotate. And then I draw. And again, now I have to cancel the translate and rotate. I have to reset. Now, finally, I do the last translate and rotate. In this case, it's going to be 300, 300, like it says down here. And the same R. And now I can run the program. And I have 4 rectangles spinning at the same time on the screen.